Hi, Meg.
Hey, Ann Claire, what's up, girl?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good. How has your week been?
Literally 2 days ago, I was telling my partner I had the weirdest, most intense dream. And I'm not going to say what it was because it was too weird for me to say. But I mean, I can tell you, but not to go on YouTube. But it was so interesting because it really stayed with me. And I realized how much it influenced, my energy throughout the day because my brain kept going back to that thing. So much so that I wrote it down. I was like, gotta talk about this in therapy. Because I was like, what? I really cannot understand what my brain did. I don't know what thing it mixed to get to that out. Because often I can figure out what my brain is mixing to sort of birth a dream. Yeah. But that one confused me so much because it really had to do with how it made me feel. It wasn't about things that I was doing or not doing or other people. It really was about how it made me feel. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because if you wake up after a dream and you're feeling a big shift because of that dream, that's something to pay attention to.
Kind of wild.
I mean, I feel like I'm getting a little teaser, but I need to know,
I will let you know.
What was the vibe of the dream?
No, I very, very, very rarely call my dreams nightmares because even when they're uncomfortable or something, I'm just like, oh yeah, my brain is just mixing things, which is weird. I don't know. I guess maybe some of them are nightmares. I don't know. It was just weird. I cannot explain to you more other than it was odd conceptually, the themes. I guess to an extent, the themes made sense because some of the themes were death. And as you know, close people to us, that's been a topic in my life. So that made sense. But the rest of it, well, I guess no, another piece made sense because there was my childhood home, which my parents are going to be selling. So I guess there must be something linked there because grief, home, leaving, not having access to a person, to a place. But the story underlying the dream, really weird. So I will leave it at that.
Well, dreams, I like to make sure that I don't attach too much meaning to dreams and that I don't assign any truth to them. I like knowing that they could just be pulled out of the sky. So try not to attach yourself to any meanings. You might not be accurately interpreting them. And it might just be kind of
it's literally like an oracle card or a horoscope,
Yeah,
it's the same validity. It's just, I find that interesting for what it brings up in me. So that's why it's the feeling that is interesting for me because I don't know where that feeling came from. And that's interesting for me to sort of look at it. That's the same reason I find it fun to pull oracle cards and to see what that lights up in me and what that brings my attention to, because it's interesting how that can suddenly point to something in your life. And you're like, I hadn't thought of that in a little while or in this way or something. So anyway, that was a random tangent.
Guys, let us know your thoughts on your recent dreams or Ann Claire's recent dreams. Or if you watched the recent episode about my recurring dreams, let us know all of your thoughts in the comments. We can just have some dream analysis going on.
In the meanwhile, we wanted to address kind of shortly a thought that was shared with us that we really get. And that thought was, I feel like I do have reasons not to let go of my eating disorder.
Well, I think Ann Claire and I are both here to say a lot of your reasons are probably very valid, right? Your eating disorder serves you in a very indirect way, not so healthy way. We recruit our eating disorder to carry out a purpose. And usually that's to feel better, to cope with emotions, to distract ourselves. The eating disorder has a purpose. And it's important to be able to kind of talk to a therapist or your team about what it is doing for you. What did you employ the eating disorder to do for you? Perhaps it's not really doing very well. What are your thoughts on that, Ann Claire?
I 100% agree. And to be honest, to a big extent, recovering means putting your eating disorder out of a job. Yeah. So actually, this is a fantastic place to start and to start exploring what it is that your eating disorder says it's doing for you. And when it comes to, I have reasons, I would say all of those reasons are true, like real, but maybe they're not really valid. You said it yourself, Meg. You're like, well, it says it's doing something, but is it really? And also, if it is, what price are you paying for it? And are you okay with that? Next step, what are other ways that you can do that? And this is really where we want to encourage anyone that has that thought to not hide it from your treatment team and bring it up, because actually that's a really helpful place to start. We use this assignment called like writing a thank you letter to your eating disorder to sort of get in that direction, because we're like, okay, well, it is doing something. We know it is. And we need to get to know your eating disorder and what it's trying to do so that we can start exploring whether or not it's actually doing it, how it's doing it, what proof you have for it doing that thing, what price you pay to do the thing in this way. And so, it's not because you feel that you have reasons that suddenly it means recovery isn't for you. Absolutely not. It's not a barrier.
Yeah, it's not a barrier. It's more of how can we meet your needs in a different way, right? So if you're using your eating disorder to feel more in control, first of all, question, am I actually in control? If I asked you to eat a cookie right now, would you be able to? Right? And it's like, if you can't, you're not really in control, right? There's a really good example. I know Carolyn brings that up a lot, but like questioning, does my eating disorder actually make me in control? You might have the illusion that you're in control. You might feel like you're in control sometimes, but are you actually in control? And then when you grapple with that, maybe work through that with your team and your therapist, you might recognize, okay, this was like a maladaptive way to feel control, right? How can I actually feel empowered and in control? Maybe there's something else I need. Maybe there's a different feeling I need, or maybe I can find authentic, healthy control. The word control is tough for me anyway, but it's like flexibility. Control with some flexibility might be healthy. Like, how do I find that differently?
You're literally highlighting the richness of this work. Like, First of all, am I actually in control? Second of all, do I even need control? Is it realistic to have control over everything in life? What are we trying to get control over? Why are we even trying to get control over things? Because typically these things are very layered. Like, we're going to be talking about, I want to have control over this or that. Why? Because then I get access to this or that. Where does that link come from? Like, suddenly we've got an extra function of the eating disorder, which isn't actually about the control. It is about the access to this other thing that we get. And typically we're going to get into really emotionally loaded things, like it's giving me access to a certain body type or praise or love, acceptance, belonging. And suddenly we're going into really important work that needs to be done with your treatment team. And this is where that gold is behind this thought is I have these reasons. Great, let's look at those. They're there. They're real for you. So we need to make sure that we help you explore those reasons so you don't feel the need to still use your eating disorder to get that, whether that is because you don't need it or because you have another way to get that.
Yeah, I think it's really important to find the reasons behind the reasons, right? Like, I'm keeping my eating disorder so that I can feel special. Okay, what will feeling special do for you, right? Mm-hmm. Like, dig a little deeper, look behind it more, get to the root of it, because it helps you just paint the full picture of how you arrived here. And you can always put it into like a fuller, richer context too, of like, I arrived here with the whole story, right? Like, my life story informs why I decided. Obviously, eating disorder is not a decision, but why my unconscious, why, plus genetics and all the other factors, how that storm turned into, okay, this eating disorder is a really good solution right now, right? Mm-hmm. This is going to be helping me. So anyway, that's kind of thoughts on that.
You just reminded me of something, because when you said that, you really reminded me of how anything that is a coping tool that we use is really rooted in wisdom and in survival. So give yourself a break for using something that was maybe like not so helpful, but we all do what we can with what we have. And sometimes that means developing an eating disorder. And at the same time, the fact that it's so multi-layered means that for most of us, we're going to have to come back to certain things several times. It is normal when we do healing work to look at a thing and then come back to it later. Doesn't mean that we did it wrong the first time. It means that there's simply different layers to it. Or maybe it's a thing that is so deeply rooted in us that we simply need to give ourselves the compassion and gentleness of looking at it several times. Because I am an extremely impatient person. I wish I could just look at a thing, solve the riddle, the equation, and be like, done, work done, figured that one out. But that's not how it works. It very, very rarely works like that. So give yourself a break if you feel like you're going back to certain things throughout recovery, or you haven't figured it out or whatever. Like, you're not an equation to be fixed and solved. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there.
Well, I feel like I've had clients make comments like, oh, well, we've already talked about this before. And I'm like, yeah, we did. And we're going to keep talking about it, because when we circle back with new context and new part of your narrative and new experiences since the last time we talked about it, we're going to circle back, right? And you're going to end up feeling like this is repetitive sometimes, especially if you're stuck in a cycle. I've had clients who are just stuck in this behavioral eating disorder cycle where we keep revisiting, we keep trying to unpack, set goals around it, challenge it, and coming back to the same wall, right? But that repetition is part of the program. It's part of...
And that wall, you're not coming to it as the same person. You're coming to it as the person with the lessons, with the skills that maybe you're practicing at the same time, with this other little thing that you changed somewhere else that now is informing your actions in front of the wall or something. So, you're not doing it wrong if you're coming back to the thing. That is very much expected.
Yeah. And there's always a new nugget. Not always, but we do bring it back because in hopes that there's a new nugget to be discovered or to
new or simply repetition. I mean, come on. Yeah. Like last time we talked about calories and, needing time to repeat certain things in another way to rewire our brains and or forget other ways to do things. Like, come on, like, we all learn really well through repetition. We're in the same boat as, humans. We need repetition to really deeply rewire our brains or learn things. So, even if it is just repeating without an extra nugget, you're still doing the healing work. That's still not lost.
That's true. And sometimes if you repeat the same thing, the same lesson over and over again, sometimes it lands better when you hear it in a different context or a different time or a different environment. Maybe the tone.
When the student is ready, the teacher appears. I think it's like I don't know, it must be the Buddha or someone like that. But it's like this quote that is so interesting because I believe that to be so true for myself. Sometimes I will journal and I will suddenly have a realization. And then I look at it and I'm like, duh, and I'm thoroughly judging myself for being like, well, that's obvious. Like literally, like I'm sure you've journaled about this in the past or someone told you. But at the time, for whatever reason, I wasn't ready to receive it. And now it's landing. And that's what matters.
And there's so much behind when you finally let it land. Like maybe you've overcome some of the fear you had. Finally face it in its fullness. And I think that's part of it. But I actually have to go because I have my own therapy right now. So I need to toodaloo real quick.
I think we actually got to say everything we wanted to say. So we nailed this one, partner. Have fun in therapy.
Thank you. Woo, woo. All right.
And toodaloo.
Toodaloo. Talk to you soon. Also, by the way, everyone go check out the Megan and Claire Show merch. We haven't even talked about it yet, but it's launched.
The merch launched.
I know.
And if you buy something, please send us pictures. We will totally repost and be so freaking pumped about it. So tag us. Please tag us.
I will have a Megan and Claire Show mug one of these episodes. So in the mail. All right. Bye, everyone. Bye, and Claire. See ya.
Bye. See ya.